Hey guys, Kid here of Burn 1 with another deck profile. This time it's going to be on 6 choice 2 gate Mushoku Tensei. It's a deck that no one really is playing right now. I know the most popular build for Mushoku Tensei is 8 standby currently, and then the other choice usually is 4 choice for gate Mushoku Tensei. But personally, I built this build 6 choice 2 gate myself because I really like the level 2 combo, and I felt the 4 choice 4 gate variant couldn't handle anything during the mid game, and you kind of were forced into a position of, I hope I cancel, I hope I get good numbers, I hope I get a climax to my hand to do things. Whereas I think this build kind of deviates or like still incorporates a lot of that of the early game stuff, but creates a better mid game opportunity for you as a choice gate player. So let's get right into the deck. Level 0 here, it's basically a standard level 0. At this point, a lot of people have seen all the like what the level 0 builds are. Every build has 4 of the Rudy runner that runs the center. That's 3,500 power if you have 5 or more cards in hand. Very strong level 0. It can dodge things, and worst case scenario is it matches the same power as a clean cut on your opponent's turn, so you at least can trade cards that way. But generally, it's a +1 like almost every game for the most part, unless your opponent has a way to dunk it on their first turn. The next card here is the Rudrid. This card, in the beginning, I did a lot of testing in this card, and I really love this card. And then it's always been kind of a struggle between, do I need to play this card? Do I not? But it seems like most people now have come to the conclusion that this card is super amazing. It lets you kind of toolbox whatever you need initially and set up color problem or fix color problems at level 1 and so forth. But it's basically like the Aqua Snow Sprite. You clock a card from your hand, then you search your deck for a character. This is used a lot of times to, if you're going second in a matchup, you can slam this, grab the Rudy PR, which we do run as a 1-up, to dunk one of their characters, and then be aggressive and swing 2 to 3 times on your second turn easily. And like I said earlier, if that helps fix color and clock, as well as find pieces you might need for level 1, level 2, or level 3 at any point in the game. It's also often used in situations where we don't get the next card into our hand before level 1. It is the Roxy Brainstorm. It's a very powerful brainstorm. It's a self-tap brainstorm. It salvages with the additional effect of when you play Climax, you can give the character Twin Drive, which helps you do 2 things. It lets you either, 1, trigger more often to push more damage, or if you need to trigger a Climax to get more stock, a card to hand, or a Climax to hand, you can have that opportunity. And the next part of it is it helps you keep your stock clean, so you don't have to pay out as much stock randomly throughout the game just because you had 1 or 2 poor triggers early on. Very powerful effect. I think Twin Drive nowadays is like such a standard effect that almost every deck would love to have Twin Drive. It's a great effect, and I think it's a great addition that came to Weiss as a supplementary effect. The next card here is we play 3 of the Sylph Global 500 that has a pay once, send this card to memory, and then top check 3, add a character from the top card of your deck to your hand of those 3 cards or whatever. This card is kind of on the weaker side, but it does a couple things here. If you play it on turn 1 with your 3/5 Rudy, it becomes 4K. So in the mirror match, it gets kind of awkward for your opponent to be able to answer that. Or like even if your opponent has a 3/5 beater themselves, now they have to worry about a 4K center runner, which is annoying. The other thing is it does give you a stock out to some misfortune early game or later in the game as well. It goes in memory, which adds somewhat of compression, I guess, in the next following deck. It adds in some additional deck speed, but generally this card is used for situations where you don't need your other supporter lane at level 1 is not needed. You can play this in the back row and save it to be able to add some extra mill whenever needed. Also helps color fix for green a little bit for our green stuff later in the deck. Next, super common nowadays is this Roxy Bonder on play to Chikard salvage the 1/0 pendant event to your hand. The pendant event and the whole Roxy package in general is such a huge staple to Mushoku Tensei deck that any deck that doesn't run it, it seems kind of nowadays weird not to have this package in it. So obviously we have this as a 2-of. It also has Roxy in the name, which helps us play pendant and so forth, and adds a little bit color fix as well. The secondary effect on it, when it comes into play, you can look at the top card of your opponent's deck and the bottom card of your opponent's deck. That isn't super relevant all the time. Sometimes you get some interesting information out of it, but generally you just play it because we want to bond to the pendant, because playing pendant as often as possible before level 3 is very powerful in this deck. Next, we play 2 of the TD Climax Swapper. On play, gives something 1500 power, including it can give 1500 power to itself, so it can still contest things at level 0, as well as make your level 1s or 2s or 3s get that extra 1500 power pump to get over things that your opponent might be able to counter over. And obviously, we mostly play this for the secondary effect, which is pay 1 digit climax, salvage a climax, because we are playing a weird split of climaxes here. This card's very important. Initial list I ran only played it as a 1 of. After weeks of testing, we bumped it up to 2. Nico and I came to that conclusion. Nico was one of the partners I had that tested this deck thoroughly. We just felt that we needed this card more often, and having a second copy in the deck was more important than any other card that we could replace that extra slot with. Finally, the 1 of Rudy PR. At this point, everyone knows it's a great going second card. It just destroys runners, destroys oversized that are alone, and so forth. Cards a staple in the deck moving forward. It's just such a good turn 2 play, while additionally having the secondary effect of when it goes away, you could pay 2 to salvage a card. So if you are aggressive early, this gives you a way to get a card back from the waiting room. Usually you have trouble early on getting stuff from the waiting room in this deck, so this card lets you grab like level 1 pieces that you might have got sent to clock early on. Then when you leveled up and this goes to waiting room, you can grab those pieces now. Level 0 game is pretty solid. I don't think at this point there would be any other real changes here. I think this is, for the most part, I want to say solved in a way for Mushoku Tensei, especially if you're playing Choice and Pants, Choice and Gate or whatever. Next, we'll move on to level 1. Level 1 is super familiar to everyone. We're playing the TD combo here, obviously, because we are playing 6 choices. The combo itself is super amazing. If you have experience 2, when this card attacks in the climax, you can top check 3, add a character to the hand, discard the rest. This gives you a lot of deck speed and everything, but on top of that, when it attacks and you have a climax combo, it gains 1500 power, making it a 7-5 on attack before any supports, which is really, really big, because at 7-5, you're already contesting 1-1-7-5s with no support, which is already massive, right? The next card here we play is obviously the Pendant. Pendant, like I said earlier, became such a crazy staple. The way it lets you kind of toolbox for your 1-ofs and things you might need later in the game is really obnoxious. Situations where you have a card in your hand that you want to hold, you instead could ditch it using the Pendant event, grab something you can use now, deck refreshes, and you level up. Then you sack this from memory and search out the card you need. For example, a common line here is that you don't really need to hold on to the tap counter even though you play it as a 1-of, because generally your pendant is going to get it when you level up to level 2, and when you're level 2 and you grab it with the pendant, that's like the time you want it, essentially from level 2 and onward, which is really, really good. In this deck, you can also get other level 2 pieces, which are really, really important, and which I think make this deck more attractive than the standard 4-choice 4-gate deck list. Next, we play 2 of the Roxy support that supports specifically the TD combo. So it has a global 500 and specifically a global 1K to that 1-0 TD combo there. The reason we play this here is because this pushes our 1075 combo into the 9K power range when you have this out there. So in the matchups, you have to contest board at level 1, like say the Mushoku Mirror when you're playing against 8 standby or any other standby deck. Playing this card in the back row and being able to contest like 2 to 3 lanes at level 1 sometimes cripples those decks. So in the 8 standby Mirror matchup, I guess it's not a Mirror matchup, but on the standby matchup against Mushoku Tensei, being able to break their 1175s that have a global 1K support, making them 8-5, is really, really big because it doesn't let them loop the level 1 combo. The only time this becomes an issue really is if they like high roll into having multiple 2-2 supports out or like in the front row. But even in the front row, you can still contest that lane, especially if you have, for example, the 1-1 Rudy there on the end that will remove it. Then you're able to contest the other 2 lanes very, very easily. Moving on, I guess we'll talk about the 1-1 early play Rudy Killer. This card is in the deck for 2 reasons. 1, it has a Soul Trigger, which is really good. 2, it can contest early plays that come to the front row. both at level 2 and or level 1 and 2. So in matchups like Mushoku Tensei matchup, you can play this, remove one of their Gales, I believe her name is. I always forget her name. But the global 1K support that's like 9K. If you can remove that off the board, you just created a 1,000 power difference on their other 2 lanes, which is really, really important to be able to contest their 1185s if they already have a 2/2 back row support, which is really, really huge. The next thing about this card is that at your start of your attack phase, if you don't have a climax in the climax zone, you can discard the 3500 center runner Rudy that we have at level 0 that we play as a 4 of to be able to summon that specific choice climax there for the level 1 combo onto the board. So essentially, this card turns every time you play it, you can always turn any of your level 0 beaters into a climax onto the board. So if you need to push extra damage even without having the combo and you need a way to get a climax on the board, this is a very easily cool way to do it. I've done it a couple times where I've played this. I just needed a climax on the board because my opponent was already out all their climaxes for the most part, and I needed a way to get extra soul. And the best thing about this, I believe, is that this card doesn't even need to be in the front row. So you can play it in the back row, triple play like the Rudy combo if you want to, or something like that. Use the effect, ditch the level 0, summon a climax, and now you're swinging it for 2/2/2 or 3/3/3 or whatever you plan to do with it. Really solid card. I like it as a 1 of. I see some lists run it as more than 1, but I feel there's not a lot of room in this list right now, so we haven't really messed with anything. And it's honestly only in there for consistency and occasionally the standby matchups where they can high roll into having 2/2s in the front row. Next, we're going to move on to the spicy part of this deck at level 2. So we play this 2/1 Rudy here, which when I initially saw it during spoilers, I thought this card was absolutely amazing. And then when the set came out, other people got the set a little bit before me or so, and were able to theory craft some stuff, and I fell into the trap of thinking that the 1/0 Roxy that has the climax combo where if you trigger pants or choice and then you could pay 1, draw 1 was like the way to go, which I think is a fair and valid level 1 to play in this deck. If you plan not to go the route of like 6 choice, 2 gate / pants, whatever you want to call it. But I really like this card right now because I feel like it's positioned in a really, like how the meta is right now, it's positioned in a good spot to like be very, very powerful because of its climax combo and the fact that it gets so much power. So the card itself is a 217K, but if you have the Roxy Brainstorm on the board, the card itself gains an extra 3,000 power and an extra soul. So it's essentially like 99.999% of the games you play in, it's going to be a 2/110K 2 soul beater for 1 stock, which is already good. The only other way you can get a 1 stock 2 soul beater in this Mushoku, I think, without playing like standby or something weird, is playing the early play, which ends up hurting your hand size, which in some cases can be annoying if you miss brainstorms or something like that. But what attracted me so much to this combo is that the choice combo itself is on attack. If you have another Mushoku or 6-faced world character on the board, you can salvage a character from your waiting room, and then the card itself gains an effect that if your opponent cancels, this card gains 4,000 power cross turn. At first you're just kind of like, that seems pretty okay. I don't understand here. Well, the thing is if you climax combo with this on the board, most games you actually end up with like about two. Sometimes you can high roll into like the 3 of on the board. You're swinging in for minimum 3 soul with the climax, right? That means either they take 3 damage minimum and you got a card back, or they cancel the 3 damage, then the card gains 4k power cross turn, making it usually a 15/5 with the support in the back row, meaning that most standby decks can't really contest that, on top of the fact that they have to make the decision to counter before they see if they cancel or not, meaning that in some cases they could end up wasting counters if they're like only 500 over and they're afraid they're going to lose their card. They could waste a counter there and end up just wasting cards to quote unquote protect their card because they end up eating 3 to 4 extra damage. One of the other cool things about this card is it's a level 2, which means anti-early play counters can't affect it. Any like bottom deck bombs or something like that for early plays can affect it, but it's still as strong as an early play with an additional climax combo that's pretty cool. And personally, I do like the choice trigger a lot because it helps you either build like more cards to your hand that you really want instead of just grabbing climaxes, or build you stock if you need stock going into your later turns. Um, since I started testing this combo, it's been amazing. It's did a lot of work. After testing it in our group in our team a bit, I took it to locals and went 6-0 at locals. And ever since then, I've been done pretty well with this deck, which I really like. And I gotta say, like the big pushing point here is this 2-1 combo. One thing to add about the 2-1 combo too is that the timing you play this card makes it so in the other version of the deck, you end up trying to loop your combo occasionally. And in those instances, you really don't want to mill out your deck, right? You like just top check and you just pray that the top card of your deck is something you can add to hand and then trigger. Because usually at that point, the deck state is in a state that you don't want to mess with your deck at all because you'd rather have those climaxes in deck to cancel. This combo in itself also helps you maintain that deck state, that really good refresh that you got, while still getting you cards to hand. Sometimes they're not always the best cards in hand. Other times it could be amazing. In some cases, there have been plays where I stocked away like a level 3 or the 2-1 counter or something, knowing I'm going to pay it out next turn to be able to salvage it off the climax combo. Next, we play this one of these 2-1 Roxy's. This has been a card that's been kind of hit or miss. Personally, for me, it's put in a lot of work. So if you have this specifically the specific level 3 Rudy in level zone, this card gains 2,000 power and hand encore, making it 2-1-8-5 with hand encore, which is really strong. So first, it's already kind of big, hard to get over with the global 500 support. It's 2-1-9K. Only one sold, that's pretty whatever. But the big thing here is the second fairy effect is when this card attacks. It gains X power, where X is the number of other six-faced world characters times 1,000. So generally, this card is hitting like 13k on attack before slamming a climax. And when you play a climax, it becomes 14k. It's enough once again, to contest those 2/2s, contest those early play level 3s. And worst case scenario is if you draw bad next turn and they kill this card. I mean, you can just pitch a card and hand encore it, and it's still a pretty good card. It can still continuously contest board if you get stuck at level 2 as well. This is in here more as kind of an answer to when the 2-1 kind of fails. The 2-1 Rudy combo kind of fails, where you don't, for some reason, you just are unable to set up multiple lanes properly or anything like that. Or if you need to make sure something dies and you know that this power will get over it, then this is a good alternative to play in that lane instead of playing one of the 2-1s. Finally, we have the 2-1 tap counter. It's a staple in the series at this point. Every deck runs it. I don't know why anyone would be surprised by it. Finally, here we are in the end. We are looking at our level 3 game. Surprise, surprise, we're playing the level 3 Roxy. It heals. It's not too huge. It gets like 2k power on your turn, so it's 11k with a climax 12k with the support anywhere from 12.5 to 14k. So it's an okay size or whatever. On the backswing, it usually dies. But the big thing here is that it lets us heal down, so we can play towards a more slower, like 2-turn kill type of situation. But with the climax combo, it kind of sets up something really interesting, which is the fact that you get to choose to burn 1 or 3 with the climax combo after your attack, so you get more information to decide how you want to push damage and if you can close it out, is really then in itself. So some games you can slam 3 of these and you can swing for 3, burn 1, swing for 3, that sticks, and then your next one, so you're like, well, might as well pitch 2 cards to see if I can get the kill here. Pitch 2 cards, burn 3, doesn't kill. Your next attack, swing for 3, doesn't kill. Pitch 2 more cards for the 3 again, and they're finally dead. It's more of like, I don't want to say it's reactive in a way, but it kind of is, because you get the fact that you get the extra information is really what makes this card like shine in those situations. The only downside to this card is that when you play the climax combo, maybe in some scenarios you don't want to burn 3 or you don't want to burn 1. You're forced to pick one of those 2 effects. So generally you're going to like have to push an extra damage here or there if you're in a weird awkward scenario where in reality you just don't want to burn 1 here or you don't want to burn 3 here for whatever reason. Next we play 3 of this 3-2 Rudy. So This card is in here mostly for two reasons. One, we need it in the level zone because, like I said earlier, we need a minimum experience 2 in this deck to function starting at level 1. So we generally would like to level this up, but not every game lets us do that. The next reason we play this, it's an early play. If you have 4 more other characters, you can slam this on the board, and it gains 4,500 power cross turn, and your opponent can't use backups when playing this card or in battle with this card, which in some matchups, just shutting off tap counter and stuff like that from your opponent is really, really big. But you got to remember too that this effect works cross turn. So when they attack into this card, you can't use a backup against it. So you yourself can't use your tap counter. So you got to keep that in mind. The other effect here is that if you have 6 or more experience, it gains an extra 1,500 power. That extra 1,500 power can, in some cases, make or break the fact that you can get over something really crazy big. But generally, the 6 experience isn't too important. You just got to keep in mind what matchups you absolutely need that extra 1,500 power. And if you need that 1,500 power at level 2, then you want to put 2 level 3s in there immediately. Otherwise, like most matchups, you can get away with only putting the 2 experience in there, or put 1 level 3 in there. And then these cards are completely fine. You don't really need the extra 1,500 power because as long as you're over, your opponent can't use a backup against it. And then finally, we have 2 other somewhat techie cards here. I don't think I went over it earlier, but the 1/0 support has the effect that if you're level 3 or higher, you can sacrifice that 1/0, send it to waiting room to summon this card for free from your hand. So the fact that our top end here, which I didn't really say earlier, but it's super cost efficient. You only need 6 stock to place 3 of these and do the combo, right? So to keep in line where in situations where we want to save stock for tap counter or we want to dig for something, very often we could play this 3/2 for free using our 1/0 support. And then when this comes in play, you draw 2 and discard 1. So it helps you find climaxes, help you filter hand, helps you dig your deck down a little bit more if you want to try to get to refresh. And then it gets 2k power in front, which is in some cases pretty good. Behind the 2/1, it makes your 2/1s 12k, and then with the climax plus the 4k power, it gets absurdly big if for some reason you're still swinging with the 2/1s at level 3. In some cases you do, just because it's a 2 soul for 1 stock that lived cross turn. And then finally, the last effect is whenever your character trigger checks a climax, you can give the character 1k power, and the effect that when they attack, they can pay 1 to twin drive. Solid card overall. It's not necessarily always needed, but it's a really good tech piece here for when you need to dig and need to find a climax, because sometimes the biggest thing you need is just you need any climax in hand to be able to use the climax swap to get the pants to combo that turn. Finally, we play a one of the stock swap. Some matches, this is really good if you somehow end up in Mushoku Mirror and they're playing Choice Pants or whatever, and they build a lot of stock. If your opponent gets too greedy with their stock, you can slam this and force them into like flushing 10 stock out and get 10 random cards from their deck, or force a refresh or something like that. And in some cases, if you have 2 or more of those level 0 sylphs that we run, a card becomes 11k and has hand encore. That hardly ever comes up, but generally this is a really good techie card, and it shows your opponent like, hey, you can't just sit on like 1,000 stock for the whole game. All right, overview for the deck. So the reason you want to play this deck over like the standard build of Mushoku is that I think it has a better matchups into board-based decks because of the level 2 game here. It kind of puts your opponent on edge, and it kind of refunds your hand more often because of the combo. I think having 8 1k1s is really good too in general if you want to push damage the way, whenever you have the opportunity, because unlike standbys, if you're not winning board with standby, your deck can't push damage as fluently as this deck. Here, your mid game is a lot more fluid in the sense that you already you have a game plan set up for level 2. It's not just loop this combo and crash your board and sit there until you're level 3 to go off and hope and pray that your opponent just doesn't randomly kill your stick like 9 damage because you keep opening up the board to your opponent's big field. Having that more fluid mid game means you can contest things more often. You can contest all types of boards at every level, which is really, really strong. So any deck that focuses heavily on winning the board, like Mushoku 8 standby deck, or any 8 standby deck in general, if your only thing here is I need to win board on defense, this deck will break those boards and really put them on their back foot and force them to play in some awkward states and so forth. But yeah, that's it for the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're interested in trying this deck out, I really recommend trying it out. Play around with it a little bit. Maybe you can make a few changes. If you end up making a few changes, tell me what you do in the comments below. I'd be interested to find out how you guys interpret this list. Other than that, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Later.